Did you know there are living prophets today?
Every 6 months, they come together at a general conference for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Join us as we study these talks at Conference in Review. Hello, I'm Dana.
And I'm Derek.
This week we've picked two talks, and I'm not sure that I have a name for the whole thing. So let's just say it's Elder Bednar and Sister Michelle Craig. And we are going to draw primarily on Elder Bednar's talk, referring to Sister Craig's talk in parts we find there's a relation. So let's take it away. Derek, what is a parable? And maybe you could get some help from Elder Bednar.
Elder Bednar talks about that this was a defining feature of how Jesus Christ taught. He used a simple definition using stories that with material things, mortal things that had a spiritual truth.
So he's telling a story that is a story, not a true story necessarily, to teach a story. I always think of like Aesop's fables, and those are called fables.
Yeah.
That teach a lesson, and then at the end there's a moral to the story. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, or whatever they might be.
Well, when you think about it, he gives examples. The grain of a mustard seed, that was something they're familiar with. It was very small.
Mm-hmm.
A pearl of great price. The vineyard, the laborers in the vineyard, the 10 virgins. He took things that he knew, that they knew well, and related it to spiritual things.
Yes.
And so there are multiple levels. You can understand on a surface level, but unless you hear it spiritually, you're not getting the real message that he's trying to give you.
Mm-hmm. I've heard some modern day parables, like the parable of the bicycle. I think that was Stephen Robinson.
I was thinking Elder Bednar's the pickles.
Pickles, remind me.
Where you put them in and they cure, and you're making pickles, and they're gradually turning from a cucumber into a pickle.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that one?
It sounds familiar. I remember the story. I don't remember the parable.
I don't remember it that well either, but I remember he was talking about pickles. So I'd have to go back and look at it. I can't remember, but he's talking about that change that happens over time.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to go back and listen to it.
Well, I remember believing Christ, and I want to say his name was Stephen Robinson or Stephen Robbins. And he was the one talked about how his daughter was saving up for a bicycle. And you probably know that one, where she was a little girl. I don't know how little she was, but she didn't have a job. She's just doing little chores around the house, and bicycles can cost pretty, in the hundreds. And he realized she's gonna by the time she saves up her money, she's gonna be wanting a car. And so he ends up helping her. She brings in all her money, and they see she's never gonna have enough for that bicycle, and so he made up the rest.
Yeah.
So this is not that parable that we're going to talk about. So the parable we're talking about is the royal marriage feast.
Yeah.
And Elder Bednar quotes quite a bit out of the scriptures about that marriage feast. And I don't want to go through and just read the talk, because I assume that if you're listening to this, we're going to tell you what talk it is. It's called Put on Thy Strength, O Zion, from October 2022. And you can go back and study this. And
just for reference, if you go through this, so he's quoting a lot of scripture. And if you look at the references, a lot of this refers to James E. Talmage when he's talking about this in Jesus the Christ. Mm-hmm. And so he's directly pulling information from Jesus the Christ and giving that in his talk, as as you look at it. So,
you know what strikes me about this parable is how it's a king, and it's a big deal, and he's saying how the Jewish weddings are a big deal, and how this is a king. So you're thinking king is someone who's very important in the land, and yet these people are just being so rude. And I tried to think of, because I think in our society, when we think of kings and queens, we tend to think of like Great Britain and the English kings and queens, like King Henry VIII. You try to do this, and he's gonna have you drawn and quartered. You didn't get away with that. But this is talking of a different time, a different king, and these people would just not only just snub his invitation, but we have someone who actually came to the wedding, and it's like almost as if they snuck in because they're not wearing the garments, because he's talking about how they all have to wear the garment.
Well, and it says that it was essentially considered a command, not an invitation. It was a command for them to go to that.
Well, he's picking up beggars on the street, right? Just picking up anybody.
Because they won't come. He goes and gets anybody off the street. And he has clothes, dress them in the clothes. And so you don't know any difference because everybody's dressed in the same clothing. So there's no rich and poor. Everybody's the same. It's like at the temple. Everybody's dressed in white. Everybody's the same. You don't have anybody that's, on an upper, know. I mean, you can kind of tell who the temple president is because, I don't know, it seems like they're dressed a little differently.
Well, they have those suits on, all the sealers and the
nicer shoes.
The men working. Know, it's like the men who work at the temple have on those suits and the white suits, whereas the women who work at the temple, they're wearing the same thing as the other women. Although you will notice that a lot of times they will have like a sweater.
Yeah.
And they usually will have on
a little different
shoes rather than slippers. Although I have upgraded to shoes because I have a bad back and I just had to upgrade. Plus my cute little slippers, they were crocheted little slippers my mother-in-law gave me, and they finally just...
But that is one of the neat things about the temple is that everybody's on the same level.
And you can't really tell. I mean,
you can't tell.
Going back to this parable, I was thinking how the way the current British monarchy is treated, I could see something like this happening more. Like, it wouldn't, but I could see this happening. Like when I was talking about King Henry VIII, okay, it would not happen. Whereas modern day monarchs, right now we hear about Prince Harry and his wife and all the stuff that they say, all the negative things that they say about the royal family. And so we can kind of see that more in a modern day where people will go ahead and kind of make fun or just be disrespectful about it.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because, his wife is an American. And as Americans, we don't believe in monarchies or royalty. And I think that's part of our, we rebelled. But that's another topic.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that this king would have to get people off the street because he's getting so much disrespect. Yeah. And now he still has to go to beggars, and he still manages to get somebody coming in there the wrong way. I think of him as a wedding crasher, basically. He's not wearing the right garment.
Yeah.
And he says it's an act of defiance, right?
Yeah.
Just open rebellion. And when he goes to say, "What are you doing?" the guy has nothing to say.
No.
It's like
completely knows. It the biggest indicator to me, he knows exactly what he's doing because he doesn't respond, "Hey, I didn't know." Because he just is speechless, he knows exactly what he's doing.
Well, if you were to crash a wedding and you say, who are you here with? You're from the brides or the groom's family? And you get caught lying and you feel really stupid.
Yeah.
And you're going to get kicked out. And this person does get kicked out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they call it outer darkness and weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth. But well, I guess I'm not quite quoting that right. He was cast into outer darkness. So I don't know if we wanted to just cross over to Michelle Craig's for a second. We talk about this is taking the long way around. And we think of taking the long way around as being hard. And she talks about the Mormon woman in someone's, and you probably have it up there.
Yeah.
She's trailing. They're going across in the wagons.
From Nebraska.
Was it Nebraska they found?
Well, it's in the Nebraska Advertiser.
Okay. And he sees her falling into the mud, or, I mean, you're looking at it, I'm not looking at it. And he's essentially making fun of her being unladylike and falling in the mud and getting up, and these little kids going. And she says, this guy doesn't know anything about her. She could be a single mother, and it's kind of making fun. But I'm thinking to myself, why would somebody do that? Why would somebody take the long way around when it was probably much easier to stay wherever she was, live her life, but to have to go by herself, pulling her wagon, falling into the mud and getting back up?
Yeah.
And I would say people do it because they know something. They believe something. Something has happened to them. Why would the people, the people of Ammon, the anti-Nephi Lehi's, why would they just sit there and pray while these soldiers are coming in with swords and hacking them up? Why would they do that? They wouldn't even defend themselves. Mm-hmm. It's because something has happened.
Yeah.
And I think of, I was on YouTube and I was telling Derek about this, and so I don't know what I was looking for, but something came up where someone had brought in a camera into the temple, a hidden camera so that no one could see it, and it was at the end of a session, and they're videoing people going up to the veil. And it kind of, it really bothered me that people are smuggling out videos that you have to have a temple recommend to get in. I'm thinking that's just such a slap in the face to everything we believe in. And whoever's watching this, or if someone put this person up to it, how they're crashing the party. They're like the wedding crash. They won't come in the way they're supposed to with the garment, but they're trying to come in a different way when everyone is invited. As in, like back to Elder Bednar's talk, when he talks about the choice to partake in the wedding feast, he said it's related to the invitation. Yeah. So, I mean, anyone, we know this, anyone can go to the temple, but you have to, you make commitments, you join the church, you're baptized, you have an interview with the bishop, and you prepare. And that's the proper way. That's the garment you wear. And someone trying to sneak in a video or sneak in or whatever, that's the wedding crasher trying to take a different way. Yeah. And you'll be cast out. Now, Elder Bednar talks about you choose to be chosen. And we're talking about how when we choose something, we often think of the act of choosing, we think of it as being one is being acted on, and so they have no choice. So if I choose Derek, it's kind of like he's helpless. He has no choice in the matter because I chose him. Too bad. Whereas Elder Bednar's saying that it's not like that. It sounds like God will choose you, but you have to choose him back.
Yes.
We were talking about when you date someone, and oftentimes it feels like, oh, the men are doing all the choices because they ask. But on the other hand, the women have veto power to say yes or no. Now you may say, well, yeah, taking aside the idea that sometimes you get pressured into saying yes or no. Let's not put it that way. But if Derek was to ask me on a date, say we don't know each other, he says, Dana, you want to go on a date with me? He's choosing me. I have to choose him back. I could say, no, I don't choose you back. And that's kind of how Elder Bednar's putting this is that when you're called but few are chosen, it's like he calls you, but you have to choose.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm rambling on a bit about that.
Nope, that makes sense. That's exactly what he's saying.
Yeah.
Just that we have to choose to be chosen.
Yeah. I'm going to go on a little bit to Michelle Craig's about the prank that her brothers played on her little sister. I thought it was funny how they're taking out the carpet while she's in the bed. How did she sleep through that? I thought that was the weirdest thing.
Yeah. It sounds like they almost had already taken the carpet out, but they hadn't done the other. Well, no, because she didn't. None of it had been done. She just thought they had moved. It's funny that she would think that they left and they took the carpet with them.
They left their daughter and they took the carpet.
Yeah.
The boys thought that'd be funny. She must have been pretty little. So they played a trick on her. Said they left a note and said,
She's
"We moved."
old enough to read.
Yeah. So was she like 8 or 9? And she says later on how, I could have just opened the door. I'm over there feeling sorry for myself, and I didn't even open the door, and I would have seen that you're all still there, and it was a joke.
Yeah.
Well, let me go back to the story of Naaman and Elisha. If you might remember him, he was a leader of what nation was he? He wasn't Israelite, but he was.
Yeah, he was. I can't remember.
Well, it's not Babylonian. Was it Syrian?
Syrian, probably.
I don't know. He was the enemy. He wasn't even part of the house of Israel. And one of his servants suggested that he see the prophet. He could heal him.
Yeah.
And he goes there, but the prophet won't even meet him. He sends a servant out, tells him what to do.
Yeah, he's kind of offended.
He's put out. He says, "Well, if he'd had you do some great thing, you would do it." Mm-hmm. So he goes ahead and washes himself like he was 7 times in the river, and he comes out clean. And oftentimes we have questions or we have concerns, and instead of taking it to the Lord, maybe we take it to social media or to other sources, when we've been reminded all the time that you just take it to the Lord. And they talk about the serpents on the snake, the serpent on the cross, how all you had to do is look. And it's something to try. Some people will not try the word. They will not try it. They would rather take shortcuts. And sometimes it's amazing how much work a shortcut takes.
Yeah.
So many people just will say the Book of Mormon is bad. It's of the devil. But have you read it? No. There's a fear to read it.
Yeah. One of the things that he talks about, Elder Bednar, is many are called and few are chosen. We're all given the opportunity, but we all ultimately have the choice. And based on that choice, we will either be at the wedding feast, or maybe we'll be at the wedding feast and not be wearing the right stuff and we'll get kicked out. Yeah. Or we just won't even be there.
Well, you take the long way around when you know something. The things that you will go through because you have had a witness. And like she talks about her sister Emily, is that you only get that witness and that ability to do the hard things when you give it a chance.
Yeah.
And that's my conclusion. Do you have a conclusion?
I think that's a good conclusion. Mm-hmm. We liked these 2 talks because of the importance of our free agency and choice, and based on how we live the gospel, we can have the strength of those women pushing those handcarts and become more immovable, like a rock, a house built on a rock. We will invite you to review these talks and continue to follow the prophet.